Welcome to the Founders Corner, brought to you by OneBridge Accounting. Here's your host, Eli Clark.
Hey everyone, Eli Clark here, co-founder and CEO of OneBridge Accounting and host of the Founders Corner podcast. Today's guest is Larry Norris, the CEO of RedSEO. Larry, very excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Eli. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. Very excited for this call and to chat a little bit about the future of SEO. That's kind of our topic today. But before we jump into that, would love for you to introduce yourself and kind of tell the listeners today a little about you and a little bit about your background and what brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, definitely. My name is Larry Norris, as Eli mentioned here. And I am a agency owner. I specialize in just SEO services. And I've been doing it for about, I don't even know, maybe 6 or 7 years at this point. I got to look on my LinkedIn to figure out what the actual dates are, but I've been independent for about 3 or 4 years. And just been doing my thing. I got into it in college and worked for a couple agencies and then ended up going on my own.
Awesome. Love that. Gain the experience and then go off and make more money doing something else, right? For yourself.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Would you mind sharing with us like maybe one or two experiences that helped kind of define the early part of your career and I guess gave you the knowledge or the technical skill to go off and start your own agency?
Yeah, definitely. I would say one of the things that I figured out once I started learning about SEO and just the whole dynamics of it was that it's very, you have to be very adaptable to the actual client that you're working with, the business type and all that stuff. So that was something that I really wanted to focus on going out on my own. I didn't want to focus on cookie cutter type SEO packages. Some sort of like you pay this much and you get these deliverables every month. I wanted to make it more dynamic and really cater it to the type of business I was working on and what they needed. Because depending on the business, I mean, sometimes there's a website that's been established and they've been doing the right things for years and they just need to have more of a maintenance type strategy to them and, slow growth and what we can do to expand. Some websites are starting from the ground up, which is a completely different strategy. With comparison to the big, larger websites. And then also you have just websites that need more creativity as far as the approach goes with how to attribute users and try bringing down funnels and conversions and all that stuff. So that's something that I really wanted to focus on going out on my own. And that's what I try to do for every client. Obviously there's routine things that you should be doing constantly, but as far as the core strategy of movement and how are we going to attribute more users to the website, that was something that I really wanted to dial in and focus on.
Love that. I think that in, I guess, the services industry as a whole, but like especially for marketing, you kind of have like two approaches almost. You've got like this white glove customized solution, and then you've got like the cookie cutter package type solution, right? And you can win with either one, but the danger spot is kind of being in the middle, right? And not deciding which one you're going to be.
Yeah. And it's a lot harder to sell, to be honest, because I mean, people, and I understand this from somebody who's hiring you, they want to see like, okay, what are you going to deliver every month? What are you going to do? And it took a lot of practice to kind of format how I was going to pitch the services and how I was going to say, I don't want to be tied down to a deliverable set because I want to make it so that I can give you the deliverables that are going to move the needle the quickest. Right. And it really took a lot of kind of practice and massaging over the years on how to pitch that. And some people aren't even about that, which is fine. I totally understand. But then my last sort of result of trying to get them is saying, listen, hire me for a month. If you don't like me, you can fire me. I don't care. And typically they stay around. So, which is good.
It's worked so far, right? So it's good.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Larry, walk me through, you mentioned you had several years of experience before starting your own agency. Obviously there's a lot of things that occur going from, being an employee or kind of more of a consultant type of role to then running your own agency. What were some of the hardest challenges in that transition?
Oh man. Everything you can think of. I've made every mistake in the book going independent. And it's like from accounting to sales to managing to communication. I've probably made every mistake there is in the book. And I will say to anybody that wants to go independent, there's a huge there's a huge unforeseeable thing that you're getting yourself into. But the only way you can do it is approach it and then take it day by day. Each phase of the process had its own challenges, and even today it does. And because you start getting accustomed to kind of the flow of things when you're first going out, you don't really know. Like I remember sitting that first day after quitting my job and being like, okay, what do I do now? And it was like weird. There's like a weird like atmosphere to it. And you are like, okay, well, I need to get a client. And so you work to do that. And then once you get one, you're like, okay, I probably need to get this many to cover my living expenses. And then you just kind of take it day by day and do what you know is right. And I would say another hard part about it is you define all of the process and how you're going to communicate and how you're going to do the meetings and all that stuff. And it sounds easy, but when you've kind of gone from working for companies that sort of had a structure or a cadence with all that stuff, everything kind of changes, like, because there's things about that you didn't like. And then, so you're trying to adapt to new ones, but then you're figuring out like, oh, okay, this is how I wanted to do it, but it doesn't work that well with the client, and, yeah, it took a while to get into the cadence and comfortability of being independent, but there's always an uneasy feeling every day with being independent, but you kind of build up a callus to it, and you're like, yeah, them goes.
That's a good way to put it. You just kind of build up a callus, right? Because you do wear so many hats, as whether you're a solopreneur, consultant type role, or whether you've started an agency and you've got a large team, right? Like you're saying, there's problems at every single phase of that type of business and every single phase of that growth. But the problems never go away; they just change, right? Those different problems.
There's a new problem every day, and sometimes it's a couple clients, their contracts kind of expire and then they move on to other things, and you're like, I got to get more business now. And then other times you have so much business, so you're like, my bandwidth is killing me. Like, what do I need to do to find more help on this stuff? And anyway, yeah, it's always interesting. Let's just say that.
Yeah, that's for sure. So anybody who's running an agency, you know exactly what we're talking about. And for those who are thinking about it, just do it, take the leap. You'll learn along the way. So
Yeah, right. Exactly.
well, I'm very excited to dive in a little bit more about our specific topic today, just talking about the future of SEO. This is a constantly evolving subject right now, just with AI and things like that. And I would love, Larry, just to start out and get your thoughts on just what's your overall AI philosophy on the future of SEO and what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and I'll preface this by saying this is all speculative. This is all from me in the day-to-day of SEO, doing the work for this many years, and just kept sort of being a big AI enthusiast and all that stuff. So as far as a data-driven, foreseeable, prediction, I don't know if I have that, but this is sort of where I think it's going to go. And I think for SEO, when it comes to AI, I think it's going to evolve in strictly user experience. And I think the idea of producing content is going to become less valuable. I think it's going to be important, and I think you're going to need it to some extent. But I think where the rubber meets the road in the future of SEO is once you can get somebody onto your website or your platform, how are you going to make that experience so personable and customizable for what that user wants to lead them down some sort of funnel to a conversion, whatever that might be. And I define it as like putting a moat around your website. And investing, you try to find companies with a moat where it's kind of like a unique value proposition where other competitors will have a hard time breaking that. And that's sort of how I see the future of SEO. What can you do with your website to define that moat? And it's really hard because you have to be really creative. There's not one answer for it, And again, that's speculative. It depends on how AI evolves, how the LLM stuff evolves, and
Mhm.
if LLMs are even the future of how people are going to even search. It kind of is moving in that direction, but there's going to be constraints, and it depends on if the LLM introduces more features like different store something or extensions within its platform.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a lot of like evolving uh components to all this that we don't even know about, but from what we know from the landscape, that's where I think it's going.
That's interesting. There's so many directions you could take that, right? Like, because it's still the Wild West, very much so, right? In the AI SEO world. So it's like, what's going to stick and what's not. You mentioned content. You think content will be, or producing content will be less valuable. Do you think people will consume less content, or do you think just the way that people discover that content will be different?
I think the way people discover it, I don't think people are going to consume less content because people are always going to want to know something about whatever happening in their world. But I think the content that will be valuable is more, um, more of like a personalized experience. So like in my case, if I were to use myself as an example, if I started writing content about how to run a business, especially in the world of SEO and all that stuff, I think that's going to be more valuable than writing a blog post about what is SEO and what's the return on investment of it, because those are sort of the long tail queries that they were going to ask an LLM that will give them a way better summary and analysis of what they're looking for. Of course, that's going to be source and pull. That's sort of where that's sort of that the trend is moving, is how can you get mentioned on the LLMs and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But again, I think if you can introduce unique perspectives to a question, that's really where the value is going to be coming in, because then you'll get pulled into that. If somebody is asking, in LM, what's the ROI of SEO, and then ask who's a good, I don't know, I don't want to say influencer, but like who's a good source that talks more about this, then you can pop up if you're talking about those specific steps or kind of granular ideas of that. Um, and so I that's where I think it's really going, and how people are going to start discovering people, at least in the short term. Long term, I think it's going to be a little bit different, sort of how I articulated it before. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That's super interesting to think about. That we're going to go from just the way people will search, and the types of things that will show up in search are going to be different based on the intent, right?
yeah,
Of the user, right? Looking. Um,
and it all kind of like
yeah.
goes into. I mean, there's a big trend right now with AI slop. I don't know if you've like caught any of this, but
No.
it's the idea that just AI is recycling things, and it's kind of an enabler of false information, but it sounds
Totally.
confident, and all that stuff. So once that's got to get better too, and that might come with the current formula of like producing original content and then getting it, pulled in from AIs and all that stuff. But that's the issue right now, is everybody's producing AI content, and
Right.
so the it's self-referencing itself, and it doesn't know what the heck is actually legit, But it's the right thing because it's pulling from sources, but the sources are pulling from it originally.
Yeah. So original content will still be very valuable, at least for the short term, but maybe it'll change over the long term.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, yeah, I would say that it's probably will always be valuable to some extent. But I just think the idea of attributing users through a strategy of like long form content is going to diminish significantly, because they can pull that up from the LLM. The new problem to solve is, okay, once you actually get them there, how can you get them to interact with something and, do what you want them to do, essentially.
Yeah, changing the user experience when they actually show up on your website, right? If I'm understanding what you're saying, what do you think that'll look like? So we talked about a little bit before, um, on the call before this. We were talking a little about kind of creating a brick and mortar sort of experience online. Like, throw it. What do you mean by that? Like, what are some ideas that you have as far as what that might look like?
So I think it's going to be, this is the good news about this idea, is it's going to become very easy for anybody to do this because AI tools and coding and all that stuff. Um, the way I envision it, and let's just use an example, let's use a dermatologist, right? let's say somebody lands on your dermatologist homepage, and the typical formula is you have a landing page, and then you have different blocks. It says, what's your condition, and maybe you have acne and eczema and all that stuff, and then those lead to different landing pages, and you kind of build out this this flower of site hub.
Mm.
So what I think would be a better user experience, at least in the future, is somebody lands on your dermatology, homepage, and there's a box and it says, let's upload a picture of your skin condition. And then so somebody can take a photo and then upload it. And then it says, oh, okay, here's what it looks like you have. And it's an AI scan of, whatever that skin condition is. It looks like acne. And it kind of pulls together a dynamic catered page to them that says, okay, you have acne. Here are some of the symptoms that you might be experiencing. Here's some of the remedies that you can do. But what you really should do is come and visit us, and we can really tell you, some good stuff that you should do about your skin condition. And so that's something that the user feels like they have a really personal experience, as if they're walking into a dermatologist and their dermatologist is looking. You kind of do it in a 2D web format, and you say, hey, here it is. And but we want to get you in here too, so we can really look at it and give you some more pointers. So you should contact us today or book an appointment. That's sort of an example of what I think, and it would have to cater differently to each industry. And this is where I'm saying that the people are going to have to be really creative. And this is where I think SEOs are really going to come in later on, where it's going to be the SEO's job to be creative about these different tactics that they can introduce. And it's going to take a lot of testing. It's not going to be you're not going to get a first try, most likely. You're going to have to morph, and just how today you don't get any SEO initiative first try usually. Sometimes you do, which is great, but it takes a lot of morphing over time, and you have to kind of play around with it.
The idea you're talking about, like just this better user experience, brick and mortar online, it reminds me of a couple of companies that I've seen that are doing maybe kind of like the alpha version of this, where it's like you jump on their landing page or their get started page or the contact us page, and it's like, hey, tell us a little bit about what you've got going on, and then based on your responses, is going to send you a different direction, right? I've seen that with like content. So it's like, hey, tell us a little about your business. Okay, cool. Do you prefer video? Do you prefer audio? Do you prefer reading? Okay, cool. We're going to send you that particular resource based in your format. That's like the most, like, in my mind, I'm thinking the most rudimentary version of that. Whereas like AI is going to come in and just like blow that out of the water as far as like the ease of use, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. 100%. Another good idea for this is like, if you're a meal delivery service and you do meal prep, you deliver it. Like, instead of you having a landing page with all of your menu items, maybe you can say, hey, like, what do you want to achieve here? Like, what are your goals? And then you can introduce things like a macro calculator, and if
Right. Yeah.
lots goal, they can start with that, and then they can say, okay, great. Based on what you've put, here are 5 menu items that would be really good for you to eat this week. And hey, we'll even give you a discount, 20% if you order all 5 of these. Like, and this is nothing like new. I mean, companies do this all the time, but this is, I think, the formula of like, you have a landing page and you have this structure of H1, H2, and you have this content that's very calculated with keywords and all that stuff. I think that's gone. Like, I don't think it's gone, but
Right.
definitely going to evolve into the sort of state where everything's going to feel this way. And I'm sure there's going to be a way where you can introduce some of this stuff to LLMs. This is very speculative. I have no idea if this is going to happen.
If I love this, yeah, I love the speculation. It's fun to think about like what the future might look like.
Yeah, like,
if you,
oh, sorry, go on.
if you put a timeline on this, when do you think this AI convergence would occur?
I have no idea. Maybe 5 years. I don't know. It's maybe 2. It just depends on how fast things move. It's so complicated with the world of AI, and well, there's so many moving parts right now. There's a lot of speculation with the industry. People were saying we're in a bubble. Some people were saying we're, right on the frontier of AGI, and there's just so much noise right now that it's so hard to predict. but I don't think any of this stuff is going to change overnight. That's one thing I can confidently say, or fairly confidently say, is I think this is going to be a slow transition, slow burn. And yeah, I just think paying attention to it and seeing how people are evolving. And I think those are going to be winners too. I think the winners in this next sort of phase of SEO, assuming this is the direction that it's going down, is people that are going to start doing it today. And you can do it very subtly. Like if you have a strong blog right now, I would ask yourself, like, how can you introduce interactive elements onto it? Like, if you're writing a blog about macros for your meal prep delivery service, can you put a macros calculator in there? And if somebody's like, I don't even know how to do that, like that seems so far out of reach. You can literally go to ChatGPT and be like, build me this calculator that I can embed on my blog, and then it will do it. And then you just copy and paste the code, and there you go. Like it's that easy right now. And I think that's going to be the winners, though. People that can start shifting into that mindset and direction. Because probably the big companies aren't going to be doing it that quick because they tend to evolve very slowly.
They're slow adopters often, right? We've seen that like with us, just personally on our website, where we put like calculators, like tax calculators or S Corp stuff like that. And that's been great for people to are searching. They're looking about S Corps. They're looking, for us on the accounting side, whatever that subject is, then go in, find the calculator, and they're like, oh, sweet, this is my potential savings, book a call or continue from there. I mean, that's, again, the most rudimentary version of that. But it's much more interactive than just 1,200 words on a blog post, right?
Yeah, totally. And if you ever look at like data from SEMrush, anything that's more interactive gets a ton more traffic than just static content on a landing page. Again, there's a place for it right now and everything. And there probably will continue to be a place for it if people are strategic about it. But if you can invoke an interaction from a user, I think it goes way further as far as SEO progress and achieving goals than just static blog content, especially right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. Leaning into the speculation a little bit more. I think I looked up this morning. Google owns over 90%. Use 90 to 94%, depends on I guess when they do the poll. But they own about 90 to 94% of search globally. There's some exceptions for places like China and Russia, where there's like some government control there. But what do you think? How do you think Google's dominance is going to change with the introduction of new language models like ChatGPT or others like that? Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I don't necessarily foresee Google losing. I think they're in a weird position right now because they have so much market share on the way people search for things, across the world. I think that most people don't know about like ChatGPT. A lot of people know about it, but nobody really like uses it. And I mean, I'm thinking about my parents, like
Not in the way that Google's used. Yeah.
exactly. Like Google has embedded itself in our culture to where our global culture to where like people are like, just Google it and they use it as like a verb and stuff. And I don't think that's going to change in a lot, like anytime soon. Now, what I think could happen is Google doesn't adapt quickly enough. And that's the issue that Google is currently facing, is because they have such a global market share. They can't just flip a switch overnight and go to a completely new platform or UI and all that stuff. People will be like, what is this?
Right. Yeah.
And so I think the future of Google search, as far as we know from like the SERP result, I think it's going to be more of a curated, customizable result for the user. I that's sort of how I foresee it evolving. Because Google's obviously taking it seriously because that's where they get most of their business, through ads.
Oh yeah.
I think they're going to really try hard to continue to dominate in this way, and people are used to that format. And so I think that, and this is speculation, I don't know, but this is sort of where I see it going, where if somebody does a Google search, I see it kind of curating more of a personalized list to that search, right? And you can argue that it's doing that currently, but I think it's going to be more of an interactive type thing. I think it's going to pull in more dynamic elements. results, and maybe give you more of an explanation as to why they think this is a good result for you. But it doesn't do that currently, right? You just put in a keyword and it gives you like a top 10 thing, minus the SERP features and all that stuff, right? And ads.
Well, yeah.
But I think that's where organic is going. I think it's going to be very personalized, and specifically, how does that look? I don't know, but I just I don't see organic going out the window anytime soon, because that's why people like Google. That's why people use it. That's their whole bread and butter, their history. You can argue the politics of Google and say, well, they're getting rid of that stuff, 0-click search and all that. But if they do that, then I don't know if their value proposition is going to hold long term. Because that's why businesses care to rank on them. And anyway, so
you think the SERP page will stay as far as like people can select from multiple options, or do you think it'll be more of like a kind of the ChatGPT where it's like a chat bot almost, where you're having a conversation?
It's a good question. I don't think it will go chatbot personally. I think if it does, we're going to see like Gemini or AI mode become the thing.
Yes, I've messed around with AI mode a little bit, and it feels much more chatbot-y, right? Whereas ChatGPT gives me like a bunch of stuff. I feel like Gemini is more of a conversation, at least at this point.
Yeah, totally. And I think people like to hunt for their search results. Like, I don't think there's specific context where people just like are like, just give me the answer, I don't care. And then there's other ones where people like want to like actually search through results and see what's out there. And I think more people are like that for specific queries. I think this is where like it kind of, you start dividing the traffic on like long form, high top of the funnel content, where it's like, what is SEO? I think those are sort of the queries that people are like, just give me the answer, give me a rundown. I don't care to look into anything else. But then you get more intent type topics of like SEO ROI calculator. And I don't think they want to use a LLM for something like that, or like a Google search and have it like give it like a chatbot type response to it. I think they want to interact with something more with like input field and stuff. Could be wrong on that. That's how I prefer to search. So I could be biased in that, but I think that's where it's going to go though. I think there's going to be a separation of traffic, and then also just transactional traffic. I don't know if Google's going to want to rank products in an LLM type format for users. I think they have too much interest as far as like the global, like how the global commerce of how the internet works. And so I think they're going to need to be very particular in how they approach that, because that's where their business mostly comes from
right, ad revenue.
Yeah, ad revenue, and just how those perform on organic too. So I think they're trying to be really calculated in how they do things.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting future to look at as far as, I mean, personally, I use Google search still traditionally. I've played around with Gemini a little bit, but then I'll use ChatGPT for different things, right? But it's like my intent with them is different. Like the reason I go to ChatGPT is different than the reason I go to Google search or the reason I go to Gemini. And like you're saying, I think eventually it'll maybe be one interface, right? One UI, and then people are just searching or whatever, and then it's going to say, oh, this is a ChatGPT type of response, or this is a SERP type of response, right? And that might be what the future looks like, right?
Yeah, and we're kind of seeing that with AI overviews too. Like
yeah, that's true. Yeah,
and I just think it's in an era where it's like kind of they're trying to figure out their footing with it, and that's why there's a lot of bad press, I think, with Google search and all that stuff right now. But I think this is the transitional period where they're trying to just figure out, okay, what's that ratio? What's that happy medium of not losing our roots of why people loved us? And then how can we evolve to where, we're staying ahead with the times and everything. But Google, as far as an AI company, I mean, they're killing it, and I don't think they get enough credit. I mean, they've been doing it for like 10 years and over 10 years, and people forget about that, and they just think ChatGPT. But I think ChatGPT has the dynamic ability, I don't know if that's a word, but of being able to pivot really quickly and stuff, because they don't have as much skin in the game as Google does with a user base and global market share and stuff. So that's not to say that they're not going to try to take it. They definitely are. But like you mentioned, I think people are using them differently right now. Like I use ChatGPT every day, but it's strictly for work stuff and like analysis and coding and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I use Google for like most common questions that I have about things, because I like to look through the results and see how people are talking about it differently.
I mean, we even used the example of a restaurant earlier. Like if I'm looking for a place to eat, a new place, I don't look for that in ChatGPT. I look for that on Google, right? And then I'm looking for multiple results to find the place that works for me, right? So yeah, different intent.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, this has been such an interesting conversation. The speculative future of SEO. To bring us back home just for a second, and just I like to ask this question as we're kind of wrapping up here, but what do you think are trends or things that people need to watch out for, people in the marketing industry, when it comes to SEO and AI in the next maybe 6 months to a year? So kind of it's less speculative, but like this is something you're actually seeing in real time.
I think just with SEO, you have different levels, right? You have kind of like the basics of SEO, and then you kind of have the mid stuff, and then you have the stuff, and it kind of grows as far as difficulty. I think the bar is going to be moved a lot higher as far as just the baseline things. It's going to be so easy to do, and I think a lot of the website builder type platforms and stuff are going to adapt to making things really optimized out of the gate. And so I think if you're a website and you don't have those sort of easy to check off things completed, I think it's going to hurt you in the long run. And so watch out for that. Just kind of get your bases covered as far as just basic SEO is concerned. And then really start thinking about just the various strategies of how you can have a top of the funnel strategy for users, a mid funnel, and then a bottom funnel, and really try to make each segment really personalized as much as you can. As far as content and user experience, and just really providing value in every stage, I think is going to be really important. And so just watch out for that kind of stuff, and play around too. I would encourage people to test things and see how they do and all that stuff. And just don't go by what the competitors are doing. Do something unique, different, not so different to where it kills you, but different enough to where it's like moving the needle and kind of the conventional methods a little bit.
I love that. Yeah. Definitely some things to watch out for over the next 6 months or so, and hopefully we'll keep an eye on that. So
yeah.
Larry, if people want to get a hold of you, where can they find you?
RedSEO.com or .com, RedSEO.io.
Okay.
They can visit the website. If they want to email me, it's larry@redseo.io. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, Larry, it's been great having you on the show. Thanks for jumping on and sharing your story with us. Really appreciate it.
This is great. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for joining us in this episode of The Founders Corner, the podcast series for marketing firms and agencies looking to learn and level up their business. You can check out more podcasts and other content from OneBridge Accounting by following the links in the show notes. At OneBridge Accounting, we're all about helping marketing and creative firms organize their finances, maximize their profits, save cash, and automate their accounting and finance functions. Check out our other resources and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.